Good morning and happy spring. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan. My name is Cathy Hedge. Whether you are joining us from afar or next door, you are welcome here. When life is a tsunami of challenges, it's natural to commit ourselves to soothe, to heal, to help. Unending commitments can stretch us, at times beyond our endurance. If you are just deciding where your commitments lie or are struggling to carry on while new commitments beckon, or are exhausted Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the mountain and crying out for help, you are welcome here. No matter who you are or who you love, you are welcome here. Our call to worship is a reading from Karen G. Johnson, based on the words of Reverend Rebecca Parker, where we commit to discover how to live among the ruins. Let us gather together, making a place of honesty where we commit to discover how to live among the ruins, how we might move among the ruins, and find what can be saved. With our collective liberation in each of our hearts, let us gather up those materials we need to build and rebuild beloved community in our midst. In gathering this morning, may we be strengthened for what lies ahead. Our opening hymn today is Step by Step, the Longest March. This is an Irish folk song adapted and arranged by Waldemar Hill, words from the preamble to the Constitution of the United Mine Workers of America. It's performed by David Rao and Stacy Guth. If you choose to sing along, please remain on mute.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
As Jonalu lights our chalice, I read from Dennis McCarty on James Luther Adams. Human beings are at our best when we make solemn promises to one another and try hard to keep them. We are promise-making, promise-keeping, promise-breaking, promise-renewing creatures. Our very humanity lies in the way we carry out our promises to our families, our co-workers, our neighbors, and our fellow members of the human family. To be genuine, a covenant must be a covenant of being. It is not just about good words, but about actions.
So we are all in covenant together in this community, and we invite you to greet people now in small breakout groups. Whoever is there is part of your community. Say hello to them.
Okay. Welcome back. Now is the time for our story for all ages. This comes from the RE supplement Soul Matters, the fifth principle, and meditate on it. And I appreciate Sandy's help in choosing these readings today. We as Unitarian Universalists have 7 principles. When we use them, we say affirm and promote 7 principles. That means we agree to them and we act on them. Our 5th principle has the word conscience in it. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large. In order for democracy like ours to work, we trust that each person has this inner voice or conscience and use it when they have a say or a vote in decisions. Conscience is the voice in your head and the feeling in your heart that tells you if something is right or wrong. We Unitarian Universalists believe that everyone has a conscience. That goes along with our first principle, inherent worth and dignity of every person. If everyone has a still, small voice inside guiding them towards good, then they also have worth and deserve dignity. This is our commitment to conscience, one of our core beliefs. We believe there is at least the possibility of good in every person. You have a conscience in you too. Yes, that conscience can help you decide what is right for society, but also what is right for you. Is the cause in front of you the right one for you? It is important to listen to yourself, not just the will of others. It is actually helpful to meditate on it, to use mindfulness practice. Your conscience can tell you something is right or wrong through signals from your body, from deep inside you. Let's explore those signals in a mindful way with a mindful moment. So let's make yourselves comfortable. Let's get into our meditation positions. Sit comfortably in your chair or on the floor. Put your hands on your lap or on your knees. Sit up nice and tall. Focus your eyes in front of you. Find your breath moving in your body, in and out. We all have moments when we have made the wrong choice and knew it. Imagine that you have decided to play a computer game even when you're supposed to be taking out the trash. Or imagine when you did something that was wrong. Imagine that. Imagine that deeply. How are you breathing? Is it fast? Catching? Are you frowning even a little bit? Put your hands over your heart and feel the ache. Put your hands over your stomach and feel that tight feeling. Put your hands on your forehead. Feel the nervousness, the tension between your eyebrows. When our conscience knows something is wrong, we feel worry, fear of getting in trouble, wanting to hide our actions from others. Sit with these feelings for a moment and feel how your body signals when something is wrong. I learned one other technique that if you put your hands together and they're cold, you are feeling stress. You want them to be warm. That's your feeling of calm. So imagine that we've all had moments when we've chosen something to do right, even when it wasn't easy. Your conscience can signal you when something is right, and you can feel in your body the ways that your body is signaling that to you. So imagine you're fixing a broken toy for a child. Or imagine one specific time when you did something that was right. Imagine that deeply. Is your breathing easy, calm? Are you smiling even a little bit? Put your hands over your heart. Feel it slow and glow. Put your hands on your waist. Are you centered, your chest filled with pride? Put your hands on your head and feel it grow with the responsibility. Or your hands on your cheek. Are they cool with the sense of caring? Put your hands on your strong legs. Feel them strong and ready to take the next step. When our conscience knows something is right, we feel pride, a glow, caring, and a sense of peace and balance. Sit with those feelings for a moment and feel how good you feel when your conscience knows you are doing the right thing. I believe that if we just pay attention, our bodies can whisper to us, yes, you are on the right path. Keep going. And maybe I'll come along. Thank you. Now it is time for our offertory. Each month we select a local organization as a recipient of our Helping Hands donations. And this month, our donations go to support the Wonder Workshop. This is the legacy of Richard Pitts, a man who had a lifelong commitment to children in our community. If you would like to donate to the Wonder Workshop, please see the link on today's order of service. And there you'll also find other ongoing projects such as our Blessing Box, which is located just outside the Wonder Workshop. Also, this religious community, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, exists because we offer our commitment, our time, our energy, our creativity, and our love. The financial support of our members and friends sustain us in our commitment to provide a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community. Your generous support is what fuels this community and its mission. And you may find the link for donations to our general operation in today's order of service. As we listen to today's offertory music, you may provide your joys and concerns through the chat feature to everyone, or just to Jonalu. Because we may post a recording of this service in an archive or on YouTube, please indicate do not read aloud if you don't want your joys and concerns read outside the chat. And as our offertory, Renee Brown will play The Promise by Michael Nyman.
As we share our joys, they multiply. As we share our concerns, they diminish. So I have a few joys to share this morning. First, I'd like to say happy spring to everyone. That is a joy for us all, isn't it? And as things move forward with more vaccinations, Linda Johnson says that their daughter in North Carolina has got her first dose of the vaccine yesterday and has an appointment for the second dose in April. So we're happy for all the vaccination that's happening. It really gives us hope. And finally, I have a joy from Lauren Clement, who is not here this morning, but he wanted to share this great, great joy. And I don't think Katie Kingery Page is here either, but we're going to share this joy anyway. Katie Kingery Page is now a full professor. Lauren was her major professor during a very difficult time in her life, and she is one of his all-time most respected students. She finished her master's degree with an outstanding thesis project, as you can imagine. And then she taught studios with Lauren and taught him a lot in that effort. She has produced unusual and excellent scholarship as a faculty member and mentored many, many students and colleagues. Now she has taken on the job that used to belong to Lynn, Lauren's wife, as the associate dean for the college, and she's managing that work exceptionally well. These are difficult times for the college, and her intelligence, empathy, and strong skills are being put to the test. But her humor, amazing capacity for making and keeping commitments, and powerful creativity enable her to make contributions to her family, the college, and various communities across the country, all the while with a smile and graceful demeanor. And I would add contributions to us here at UU, at the UU Fellowship. We are grateful for her commitments. We're grateful for all the commitments from all the people who put so much into making these services happen, into making the Blessing Box happen, in making Happy Kitchen, which is going to be revived, happen. All of these things that help make our community a better place to be. And so Cathy has a couple readings for us. Oh, wait a second. One other thing from Les Lotchke, our daughters in Massachusetts and Wisconsin got their first shots of the vaccine, and they both got theirs through the Vaccine Hunters website, which helps people to find vaccines that would otherwise be wasted. So that's, you know, another one of those commitments from people that help make the world a better place. So Cathy has a couple of readings for us.
Thank you, Jonalu. In this past year, the struggle has often seemed endless. For some, just to force themselves to rise from bed in the morning has taken all they have. For those living alone or those crowded by conflict as the walls close in, or a young parent trying to keep a child in school online, the commitment to survive is overwhelming. For our frontline workers, our teachers, our nurses, those who have stood between us and the rest of the pandemic, they have been asked to push themselves beyond endurance. You, my friends, are among them, and you have never stopped trying to reach the mountaintop. For years, I worked as a mentor to young teachers. I saw them trying so hard to make things right for children who needed them so desperately. And I wrote this poem for them. But as I've watched the struggles of so many people of commitment this year, I recognize the pain and the eternal question, is any of this worth it? I read this poem in honor of them and all of you who answer that question. Yes. The Sirens on the Mosaic. Patience. He kneels down beside the child. Now make the loops one over, one under, just like that. Pudgy fingers twist the strings to muddy knots. Okay, let's start again. 20 children, 40 shoes, half a recess come and gone. He stands and rubs his knees. Will they learn tomorrow, that day, or the next? I'll never give them all they need. Persistence. She moves like a whisper between closed chairs. Long-legged boys pull back to let her pass. A sharp-nosed girl looks away, biting her lip. As the teacher nears, she shuts her books, groans, I can't. It's too hard. I won't. Minutes later, her book open. The girl smiles. At day's end, teacher kicks off her shoes and sighs. Did I reach her today? Passion. Early morning, the scent of fast food coffee muddles the air. A dozen students prop their chins on their heads. 7:45 on Monday. Maybe she should let them sleep. Instead, she revs the stereo. Porgy and Bess duet the stage. Her pantomime swirls students from their seats. Sleepy laughter rings down the halls, waking others from their stupor. At night, she wonders, do they really care, or are they here for the show? The sirens call. Teachers, let us build a masterpiece where dreams from yesterday come true tomorrow. As pyramids stairway to the moon, starting with the first step and ending at the last. Gather your brilliant stones, patience, persistence, passion, and place them next to mine. Together, we transform each child to their best selves. Together, we create our mosaic miracle. Thank you all for all that you do. My second reading is from Reverend Scott Taylor. Faithfully let us travel into the new day. In the end, they will know our commitments by our actions. They will measure our legacy by our loyalty to the long haul. Our strength lies in the willingness to bear the burdens of others. Our love lives on to the degree we choose to offer it, when the offering isn't easy. So let us choose wisely with great intention and care, knowing it is not simply we who make promises. Our promises also make us. So faithfully, friends, let us travel into the new day. Amen. And now we will hear from our Reverend Jonalu.
Cathy has reminded us how commitment often works in our lives. We make a decision to commit to something, a career as a nurse or a teacher, for example, and then one day or 1 year, the commitment turns out to be far more than what we ever expected. We end up working through a pandemic. Still, we take it step by step. In most every workshop or class that I've ever taken or led on recruiting volunteers, one of the key messages has been to be honest about the expectations of the commitment. It is helpful for volunteers, for anyone, to know what to expect when they're making a commitment. And it creates a lot less resentment if people know ahead of time about difficult expectations. However, my experience tells me that that is not how life works. We don't know when a pandemic is going to force us to learn entirely new ways of doing our job. We don't know that we're going to have to nurse an ailing partner for years. There's so many things we don't know when we make commitments, even with smaller things. I remember agreeing to go on the board of a crisis center many years ago and became chair of the board. It won't be a hard year, someone had promised. Then the executive director resigned. And suddenly, the year was a lot harder than anticipated. When you make any commitment, you cannot be absolutely sure what it might entail. And it's not just on the big commitments like career or spouse, it's all the commitments we make. Take James Reeb, for example. Some of you may know his story. In 1957, as a Presbyterian minister, he began the process to switch his ordination to the American Unitarian Association. His commitment to racial justice led him to serve as youth director at Philadelphia's YMCA, where he ended racial quotas. Once his UU credentials were established, he became assistant minister at All Souls Church in Washington, D.C., perhaps the most integrated UU church that existed in the early 1960s. And then he moved to Boston. Well, actually, he moved to Roxbury, a predominantly Black inner suburb, where he worked with the American Friends Service Committee on racial integration of housing. His daughter, Anne, said he was adamant that you could not make a difference for African Americans while living comfortable in a white community. As deep as his commitment was, he did not know what would be required of him. When sheriff's deputies and state troopers violently decimated a march that became known as Bloody Sunday, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. called for religious leaders to come to Selma and march with the Black activists seeking their rights. Reeb talked it over with his wife, said goodbye to his 4 children, and bought a plane ticket. Few of us would go that far to express our commitment to the cause. More, though, would be required of him. He expected to be gone a few days. Instead, along with a couple of other colleagues, on the streets of Selma, in between trying to cross the bridge, he was besieged by white supremacists. Beaten severely, he was taken to a hospital where he died. Reeb did not set out to be a martyr to the cause. But I'm not sure that very many people actually set out to be martyrs. Most have the same story. They embraced a cause without knowing where it might take them. Michael Servetus, burned at the stake by Calvin in the 16th century, set out to declare the truth of Unitarianism, to deny the Trinity. He didn't intend to be killed for it. Sometimes to find our most basic commitments, someone will ask, what would you be willing to die for? Maybe a better question is, what would you be willing to live for? Because that is what takes the real effort. I couldn't get through Women's History Month without mentioning Olympia Brown. She was the first woman to be ordained officially by the Universalists and sanctioned by the denomination. She didn't die for her cause. She lived for it through much resistance. Now, this picture shows her as an elderly woman. She did, after all, live her commitments for a long time rather than die for them. Imagine her, though, as a girl in the early 19th century, wanting more than anything else to be a Universalist minister. How would a girl even get that idea? Olympia Brown got it. Raised a Universalist, she believed throughout her life that women were completely equal to men. When she attended Mount Holyoke, she was frustrated by the restrictions that were placed on women, so she transferred to Antioch College. And there, women were not required to deliver memorized speeches in English, but she did so because she was determined to do everything the men were expected to do. And she brought, as a speaker to her college, her heroine, Antoinette Brown Blackwell, no relation, a Congregationalist woman who had managed to get ordained. It could be done. Women could be ministers. After completing college, Olympia Brown started applying to theological schools, and none would accept her. Finally, the Theological School of St. Lawrence University did not outright reject her. The dean sent her a discouraging letter dissuading her from such a pursuit, and was surprised when she showed up and made it through the entire curriculum, making her the first woman to graduate from a theological school. Olympia Brown, though married, she kept her own name, began her ministry in New England, but eventually landed in the Midwest like so many other Unitarian and Universalist women ministers who were ready and willing to serve where the young Harvard-educated boys did not want to go. The women tended to support one another enough that a label arose, the Iowa Sisterhood. Brown's Midwestern Church was the Church of the Good Shepherd in Racine, Wisconsin, now renamed the Olympia Brown UU Church. Widely respected, one newspaper described her as the female Beecher of the rostrum, equating her with Henry Ward Beecher, known as the best preacher of his day. Whoops. An interesting twist in Brown's story is, in the story of her commitment, is that she resigned her ministry for other pursuits. The germ of that started in 1867 when Lucy Stone convinced her to do a speaking tour for women's suffrage in, of all places, Kansas. She spent a summer riding in rough wagons on rutted trails and made more than 300 speeches. She returned to ministry, but a seed had been planted. It took 20 years for that seed to come to fruit. As committed as she was to universalism and spreading the gospel of God's love, something particular called her: women's right to vote. Her commitment to universalism never died, but it changed, it morphed. Universalism convinced her that women had to have all the same rights as men. And so she left ministry in 1887 to become a full-time activist. And she was one of the few of her era to live to cast her own vote. Her daughter, Gwendolyn, described her mother this way: she was not popular. She was indomitable and uncompromising, traits that do not lend themselves well to politics and leadership. She cared little for society, paid no deference to wealth, represented an unfashionable church, promoted a cause regarded as certain to be unsuccessful. She was troublesome because she asked people to do things, to work, to contribute money, to go to meetings, to think and declare themselves openly as favoring a principle or public measure. So she not only made commitments, she invited other people to make commitments as well. So let me introduce you to one more committed person, a contemporary, though not a UU. I discovered him through the podcast Resistance. Mwazulu Dianbanza, a political refugee and activist from Congo, has stolen African artwork from museums in France and the Netherlands. Grandson of the governor of Mapangu province, he contends that the works were stolen from Africa and need to be returned. More than 4 years ago, French President Emmanuel Macron commissioned a study of French-held art that came from Africa. The commission said, without a doubt, thousands of artworks needed to be returned. Funerary poles, thrones, brass heads, plaques. All these objects were taken, removed, stolen from the people of Africa. Remember how European nations, France, Britain, Holland, Belgium, divided up the continent and sacked it, removing natural resources like oil and diamonds? Europe stole the cultural wealth of the continent at the same time. Are people sometimes touchy about cultural appropriation? That might help explain it. Their culture taken. And within memory, as Dianbanza reports seeing a bracelet that he believes was his grandfather's in the Africa Museum in Bergendal, the Netherlands. So the commission said these works needed to be returned, but there were no immediate results. 4 years later, one object has been returned to Africa on loan. So Dianbanza and his colleagues have taken action. Live on Facebook, they have appropriated articles from museums in France and the Netherlands. They have been variously jailed, fined, restricted from museums, and once in Marseille, acquitted. They're not done though. Plans call for actions in Belgium, Spain, Germany, Portugal, the Vatican, and the British Museum. Here is a man living his commitment and encouraging others to join him and examine their consciences. What equips us to live our commitments, even when they might end up demanding more than we thought they would? Jail, death. What gives us the energy to persevere through the slog, through the threats, through whatever it is that would thwart us? First, we have to recognize that commitment is not about easy one and dones. Rather, any genuine commitment will require energy, determination, and perseverance. Few efforts are worthy of our commitment will be accomplished easily or quickly. UU minister Angela Herrera put it this way in a sermon a couple years back, pre-pandemic. We are in for a long haul, which means we cannot prepare ourselves as though it were a quick campaign. Sadness, anger, and fear will only carry us so far. The strength that sustains resistance comes from the heart and the spirit. So let us make our homes for now in this chaos. Allow yourselves to be in harmony with uncertainty, so that when you are called to action, you will not be already exhausted. Breathe. Feed your body and spirit. Get centered and give thanks for what is good and beautiful. Remember that we are made for play and joy as well as striving. Surround yourself with friends. So it sounds a bit like pacing ourselves. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? Herrera mentioned some of the feelings that can be initial motivators. And one of those is anger, one of the most powerful feelings that can really energize us and give us strong motivation. Community organizer Ernie Cortez introduced me and many others to the idea of cold anger, anger that has cooled enough to last longer and be more effective. The best explanation I've ever heard of it, though, comes from transgender activist Kate Bornstein, who wrote, "Anger and activism mix about as well as drinking and driving. When I'm angry, I don't have the judgment to select a correct target to hit out against. I do believe that anger is healthy, that it can lead to a recognition of the need for action, but activism itself is best accomplished by level heads who can help steer anger toward correct targets. Herrera also mentions spirit and heart, and I take her to mean that we need some sustaining spiritual connection. Dr. King, when at his lowest, would call Mahalia Jackson and ask her to sing Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Now, I've never had a Mahalia Jackson on speed dial, but there are other options. Writer and poet Natalie Ruth Joynton says over the last pandemic year, she has listened to John Coltrane's A Love Supreme 50 times as she has grieved losses and navigated through what she calls a difficult time. Music, art, poetry refill us and rejuvenate us, as do prayer, meditation, being in nature, and the spiritual art of being where we are. We also need to recognize our emotions, find ways to channel them, and make room for the gentle and beautiful incidentals that make life worth living. The blooming crocus, the smile of a child, laughing uproariously or tearing up tenderly. And some of this amounts to simple self-care. The basics matter. There may be times when challenges keep us from proper diet, rest, and exercise. Whenever possible, though, we need to keep ourselves healthy and fit in order to keep on going. And as the old suffragist saying goes, give us bread, but give us roses too. The bread and the roses are both part of the self-care. And maybe it's not even a marathon. Maybe rather than being a sprint, rather than being a marathon, maybe it's a relay. Collaboration. Activism and commitment work best when they're carried out together. Many stones can form an arch, singly none. I used to work with a women's group where a leader would often say, one woman can't do anything. 2 women can do anything. Our individualistic society has convinced us too often that achievements are singular. James Reeb was not alone when he was beaten, though he was the only one who died. Clark Olson and Orloff Miller also took a beating, and plenty of people who walked that bridge did too. And many stood ready to continue where Reeb fell. Recognize too that a change in commitment is not necessarily a failure or backing down. Remember Olympia Brown. No one could have been more committed to becoming a minister. But when the movement for suffrage came along, she knew she had to move in a different direction. She had to make a new commitment. We need continual reassessment of the commitments, changing them as we need to, intentionally and transparently, rather than fading in and out. That too helps maintain our commitments when we and those around us are clear on what they are. Inspiration, being realistic about the demands before us, self-care, collaboration, and continual re-examination. A few of the keys that will help us keep going through the trials and will get us to the well-earned rewards, the lifelong friendship, the right to vote, the grown adult children who fill you with pride. The commitment has an outcome. What's more, could we really live with integrity without the commitments we are called to make? I leave you with the famous words of the great Rabbi Hillel from the 1st century. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? So at this time, I would invite discussion. Cathy will help us manage the discussion. And if you'd like to comment, you can note that in the chat. You can write something in the chat, or you can say you'd like to speak and you'll be recognized. So any thoughts on commitment?
Jonalu, I just like to say thank you so much for speaking of Reverend Brown in this centennial year of the women's right to vote. Ooh,
Yeah.
well, we're actually celebrating it into the following year since we couldn't play with it this last year. We really appreciate that. And Larry Weaver has a question. What are some ways I receive to receive when you have failed in commitment?
Oh, wow. You know, that beautiful thing that Cathy referred to earlier in the service, that we are a promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing people. When we have failed, we are called to be accountable. And so to me, what that means is that we acknowledge the failure and we apologize as we can, we make amends, we ask, what would it take to make this better? And we try again. So that is part of our human challenge. We will sometimes fail at our commitments. So thank you, Larry, for that question. It's a really important one. I leave you with the words of Nelson Mandela. I have walked that long road to freedom, I've tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way, but I've discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I have come. But I can rest only a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended. Our service, though, is ended. I invite you, if you wish, to stay and visit in breakout rooms. And if you're not staying, then have a lovely rest of your day.